Hey guys, welcome back to G.I.Joe on the Tabletop. My name is Brad from the Cast Dice Podcast Network, and today we are going to revisit two of some of my favorite Cobra units from the 1985 toy range. Of course, we're talking about the Cobra Eels and the Cobra Snow Serpent. Now, for those of you who are paying attention, you will know that we have covered both of these in previous videos. In both of those videos, we were visited by the incredibly talented, prolific hobbyist and artist, Dr. Mercury. Now, he came on to talk about how we could use conversion parts in conjunction with established models to create these two units on the tabletop in a way that visually made sense. You look at them and you go, yes, that's a Cobra Eel, and yes, that's a Cobra Snow Serpent. But they did require a fair bit of work to make that happen. Now, excitingly, Footsore Miniatures US, not to be confused with the UK website. If you go to Footsore US and go to their pulp range, they have recently put out a series of blisters of new models, some of which resemble both the Cobra Eel and the Cobra Snow Serpent closely enough that with minimal work, you can actually feel these on the tabletop and have sensational looking both models and armies. So I want to talk about that today. Well, let's talk about the Cobra Eel to start with. Now, when the good Dr. Mercury came on, we talked about some of the visual cues that were important when you are looking at a Cobra Eel to make it look different from an everyday scuba diver. We talked about the hexagonal face mask. We talked about the backpack with the hoses. We talked about the flippers. We talked about the spear gun. There are quite a few visual cues that matter and match if you are to put a Cobra Eel and have it be instantly recognizable as an eel on the tabletop. You might also notice that there are the forearm gauntlets and of course the blank chest where the Cobra sigil lies. Well, let's look at some painted examples of some of the new Footsore models, and I think you'll see right off the bat that they match almost perfectly. Now, these are called the Naga Frogmen, and if we look at them, of course, they have the hexagonal face plates, they have the flippers, they have the tubes going back from their masks to their backpacks, and we will get to their backpacks in a minute. There is some shoulder armor. This looks remarkably like a Cobra Eel. Now, is it an exact match? No. But is it close enough? Yes. Now, I hear some of you saying in the background, yeah, but Brad, they don't have the spear guns. And the spear guns were kind of a big deal on the figure. Yes, but if we look at the comic book that G.I.Joe often draws from, or I should say, perhaps the toys are featured in the comic books, Cobra Eels don't always use those spear guns. Now, if we look at issue 47, appropriately called Sea Duel, we see Cobra Eels both piloting the Hydra foils and the Hydra sleds. And when Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes take over a Cobra hydrofoil to escape from Cobra Island, we see a couple of Cobra Eels stowing away and ambushing Storm Shadow on that hydrofoil. Now, you'll notice they're not using spear guns. In fact, they're using machine pistols and AK-47s. Now, that is definitely not a spear gun. Likewise, in issue 53, called Pitfall, we see an all-out Cobra assault on the G.I. Joe pit. And as part of that, we actually get to see, for the first and only time, a proper Cobra aquatic landing. And we see eels having an amphibious landing. And here they're coming out of the waters. And yes, on the left, you can see that very distinctive spear gun. But if you look to the right and center, again, machine pistols, AK-47s, you can tell from the banana clips and the straight clips. They are armed both ways. Now, later in that issue, we see them nearing the actual motor pool. Of course, they've taken off their flippers. They have them stowed to their hips. But if we look, they have the demolition charges, and they have both the machine pistols, AK-47s, and those spear guns. So getting back to the Naga diving, here are some of the greens for the models. Now, this is a very good picture, which is why I'm using it. I know that greens aren't the finished model. I will show you a finished model in just a minute, but because these aren't metallic, it's really easy to see the details. Now, you do see the gauntlets, you see the armored shoulder plates, you see the face plates here, of course the flippers, and what's really nice is those flippers aren't attached, and I didn't realize that when I bought them. So if you want to have them in more of the amphibious assault, but on the land, you can actually, just like in the last shot from the comic book, attach the flippers to their hips. Now, you'll see one of the Naga divers here has a heavy machine gun, and the other three have standard assault rifles. Now, if you are not really into the modern assault rifle look that these models have, I was also pleasantly surprised to find out that those are separate pieces. So it's really easy to take some hands from another model and glue them into place and then use a different kind of rifle. Now, in my case, that means I'm probably going to do a couple of spearmen, try and make a couple of those out of plastic card, only to be loyal to the original series. But more to the point, I have a handful of AK-47s in both metal and resin, and plastic, actually, now that I mention it, that would fit these models perfectly and would match the aesthetic that was represented by Cobra Eels in the comic book. Now, if we look at the backpack, I said I would be coming back. Here we go. Here are the models from the rear. You can clearly see the backpacks with the hoses. These are great. They even have the segments at the bottom that some of the Cobra Eel models had. These are perfect. In my mind, there are very few models out there that more closely, there are no other models that look this close to a Cobra Eel, and they are so close, and I'm so excited. Now here we go. Here is the models themselves. Now my camera has a slightly warped lens at the moment, so I'm having trouble getting good close-up shots without a little bit of blurriness. I am sorry about that. But here you can see the models without their flippers. They're separate. Now the heavy machine gunner is mounted. You cannot get that off without cutting. That's not a problem though. He is 1 out of 4 models in the pack. The other 3, however, have the weapons with the hands separately, which makes converting them really easy. I'm really excited about these models. I recently got 12 of them in the mail. I will be painting these up, and I'm not sure if I'll do another whole video on them, but when I'm showing off my Cobra forces and talking about army building, you will definitely see painted versions of these models soon. Well, let's talk about the Snow Serpent. Now, the Snow Serpent, again, is one of my absolute favorite Cobra unit builders, basic troop types. They are Cobra Eels themselves who have undergone paratrooper training, Arctic survival training, and anti-tank specialist training on top of the underwater operations and the demolitions. These guys are amazing. They are the special forces for Cobra. And again, just like the Naga Frogmen, we have some very exciting blisters from Footsore US in their pulp range that match these guys pretty spectacularly. Now, if we look, some of the iconic aesthetics that must be in these models, you have the parachute with the chest pouch, the AK-47, the very distinctive helmets with the goggles, and the rocket launcher that is over the shoulder. Also, snowshoes. All of these things, very important. You also have the paratrooper pouches on their thighs and the furry gauntlets and the fur neck lining of their uniforms. All of which, very important if you are going to represent these on the tabletop. Let's see how Footsore did, shall we? Well, before that, I should say, they also appeared in the cartoon, and they are very visually similar. I was hesitant to pull out some modern comic appearances by these guys, because they really didn't appear in the Real American Hero run of the comic book, unfortunately, as they were one of my favorite, and the comic book was sort of where I got a lot of my G.I.Joe lore for. I was always wishing that they got more of an appearance. But here we go. We can see the actual models. Now, they have the paratrooper pouches on their stomach, and they have backpacks, which we'll get to in a second, that match. The helmets are very close, especially the ridges along the mouth. They have the goggles along the top and the fur gauntlets and the necks. Those visually are very important cues that really do make these models sing and pop, as if you are wanting them to be snow serpents. Now, a couple things they don't have. They do not have snowshoes, and they do not have that rocket launcher. And they also don't have AK-47s, which were important parts of the original model. But again, just like the Cobra Eels, these models, their weapons are a separate piece. All of them. So when you have yours, and it's a separate piece, you don't have to glue it in. You can replace the hands with hands from other models, and you can replace the weapons from any number of sources of places. I get a lot of my metal assault rifles, AK-47s, for example, from the assault group. Great place to just get bare metal weapons that you can cut the handles off of and stick right onto your models. Now, as I mentioned, they do have the giant backpacks that were associated with snow serpents that were both their parachutes and their Arctic survival gear. These models really do very well represent everything you would want in a snow serpent. Here are some close-up pictures of my models. As I said, the weapons are separate. Unlike the Eels, all of the hand weapons are separate with these guys. So I think for me, it'll be a really easy case of, again, replacing the hands with AK-47s. And that gives me a chance to create some heavy weapon troopers in the form of perhaps a heavy machine gunner, one per squad. I did get several squads worth of these guys, and I instantly kicked myself that I didn't get enough to make a whole Arctic force. Now, there are also other exciting new releases from Footsore coming up that have more Arctic Naga troopers that work really well for Cobra, and I'm fighting the urge to paint an entire white army very soon, given that I already have Cobra Wolf printed in the right size, and I've already converted up and painted several Arctic Hiss tanks. Ooh, tempting. But one thing that I did mention that the Snow Viper always has and was on every action figure and is not represented in these blisters, that if you are wanting to properly make a Snow Serpent unit, you probably need to find, because anti-tank specialty is kind of what they do, would be their rocket launcher / mortar, whatever you want to call that rocket device that they have. It is probably an anti-tank weapon according to the file card. Now, Dr. Mercury on his Thingiverse page, if you go to Thingiverse and search up Dr. Mercury, he has made Snow Serpent heads that you can put on models. Now, clearly you wouldn't need them in this case, but as part of that sprue, he also has 3D print versions of those rocket devices. So you can print them as many as you want for these models. If you are going to represent them on the bolt action tabletop, like I probably will, I'm probably going to print off several of those rocket launchers and put them at the model's feet, just like they were in the file card art, and then call them perhaps Panzerfaust. Of course, they're one-shot weapons. Every time you fire one, just take it off the model's base, sort it. So that is where I'm going with this. Guys, if you have not checked out the new Footsore US pulp range, there's a lot of great stuff that could be used for G.I.Joe in there. And I know this has been sort of a commercial for them in the long run, but I just wanted to really draw an underline under these and let you guys know that they exist. Guys, thank you so much for everyone who's reached out and said that they've enjoyed these videos. Again, if you would like to contact me directly, you can go to Facebook and search up Cast Dice. CASTDICE. If you message the Cast Dice podcast with that logo on Facebook, you will only get one person. That is me, and I will reply. Guaranteed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed this and you'd like to see more of this content, please click subscribe below. Have a good one. Stay safe out there, guys. And we'll see you on the tabletop soon.